And welcome back to another episode of the MindSets podcast. I'm joined again by the fantastic Charles, who's promised me today he's bringing his most positive attitude. He doesn't want to be grumpy.
I've never been more positive.
That sounded so positive. I've never been more positive. But we have got another great episode today. We've got another physical topic and a mental topic we're going to talk to you guys about. We've obviously got things that grind our gears because that's who we are. And I'm coming at you actually with the interesting thing this week. It's actually last week, but we aren't recording till now. The half marathon world record. It feels like we just spoke about the 10K road record for GB, but we can't really not talk about the half marathon world record because what?
And 56 was it?
56 minutes. I think it was 56, 41 or 42. Mm-hmm. And
don't tell me what that is kilometers per hour because I
already looked. Not kilometers per hour, but in like a split pace per kilometer, it's like 2:41, which like I can't hold for longer than 200 meters.
So Tuesday night we did an event which had 1K max effort, just once.
Go on.
3:12.
Yeah,
max effort, and I was just like, I'm probably going to be sick now. It helps it put into perspective, doesn't it? Which is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I think the thing that's really like crazy about it is I've always been interested in the idea of breaking the 2-hour marathon. Like it's been done, but kind of not legally within the rules of the sport. But it's always been like, oh, people can do 58, 59 minutes, but like that's so hard to then maintain for another hour. But 56 minutes, there's slippage time there if you wanted to do a marathon.
Yeah, you have some wiggle room.
And so there is a real now excitement about the London Marathon because that's where he's doing his first actual competitive marathon, I think.
I'm just concerned because London, don't get too excited because London isn't typically a fast course.
I was going to say, it's a bit, it's not flat because it wasn't the record set in Valencia.
Berlin.
Was it Berlin?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, what, the half?
The half marathon.
Oh, I can't comment on that. I don't know. It's probably Valencia.
It might have been Valencia because Valencia is known to be the fastest marathon track because I think it's just so flat.
Yeah.
Arguably with a bit downhill towards the end. But yeah, crazy. And the other thing as well that's mental is I believe he matched the 10K world record in his half marathon. So there was 5K before it. He then ran the 10K world record. Yeah. And then he ran another 6K afterwards, basically at the same pace.
Yeah.
Which is just absurd.
It is amazing.
So fair play. I guess I can put my dreams of breaking that myself, that can go away. But yeah, I think one of the interesting things is we're talking about running. The reason that running is part of the discussion is running became part of my life about, I want to say like 14 months ago, really 15 months ago. And it was partially fueled by things like run clubs. Mm-hmm. And that is the first topic of today. So social fitness clubs.
Let's talk about them.
Let's talk about them because I think they are an interesting thing. Mm-hmm. There's lots of mixed opinions on them. I've had a great experience with them. However, I also would admit that I am far less involved than I once was. My question is, are they dead?
Sure.
Am I part of the reason for that? I've just stopped going to some of them. Or are they actually still very much alive and I'm just missing out?
Yeah, I think there's two different things we've got to discuss. Run clubs and social fitness clubs.
Oh, you're considering them as totally different things?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I am in no position to comment with any credibility about run clubs. I've never been to a run club.
Okay.
Ever. But from the outside looking in, I'd say that social fitness clubs are taking over from what run clubs basically started, like social fitness. I see the run clubs slowly dying, but the social fitness clubs kind of taking a rise. But yeah, I'm similar to you. I've had some really good experience with social fitness or community fitness, having coached social fitness clubs for a while. I think they're a good vehicle to get people into fitness, but there are some potential pitfalls that I'm sure we'll discuss.
Well, let's talk about run clubs first then. So, like I said, run club is something I remember going to the first ever Gymshark run club that was at Regent Street. And before that, and we've spoken about it before because we've had Milo as a guest, hosted the Revive Hybrid Society, which actually started off being a run club, became this Hyrox thing that you were involved in. That's how I got to meet you. But
So good things do come of it.
well, exactly. Well, genuinely speaking, this podcast probably wouldn't be here without run clubs. And this is something I wanted to say, because most of the guests, and the listeners might not realize this, most of the guests that I have on, I can't get away with cold DMing, because you do slip into message requests.
Yeah.
People also think you're quite weird. Who doesn't have a podcast in today's world? So it was difficult. And now I will say it's slightly easier with a bit more following. So thanks to you guys for following along. And if you're not, go to @MindSets_podcast, drop follow. Great. Slip that in there. But the big thing that's really difficult about that is trying to convince someone to come onto your podcast, which was being recorded at my house in South London, in the middle of nowhere, when the podcast itself had like 300 something followers. That's really difficult. So the only way I was able to do it was physical networking, which my body took a toll on, because I was doing like 6 social fitness club events a week, in the off chance that I would meet someone. And I've promised myself I will keep doing this until I go to 3 in a row and I don't meet someone that would be a great guest. And yeah, that sort of happened. But every once in a while, I still go to a social event and I'm like, oh, you would be great. Let me introduce myself. And like I said, it's a little bit easier now because I've kind of broken down the barrier mentally of going up to talking to someone and inviting them on. But yeah, this whole thing wouldn't exist without them. And when I first started going to them, and I don't know if this is my opinion of them has changed, but it very much was this get together, let's have some fun doing this event, let's get the endorphins. And I think something has changed in that through so many big brands hosting run clubs and seeing the success of ones like Pure Sport in building a community with a brand, all of a sudden, a lot of run clubs seem to be associated with a brand, not just the run. And I start to wonder if that somewhat puts me off going to them, because I feel like I'm going to support the brand, which I'm not necessarily that interested in. I'm more interested in going and hanging out with people that are there. And I wonder if that's where, in my head, they've started to change in their nature.
Sort of dilutes the reason why they were like put together in the first place.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, you can't question the success of Pure Sport Run Club. And I was actually having a really good conversation about Pure Sport the other day with someone where I think they've gone through full circle now, where they started the run club and this big community thing to get people to see them and see their products and buy into the brand and buy their products. And then after that, they kind of started to promote their products a little bit, what we sell, why you should buy it, etc., etc. And now it's gone full circle again, where they don't really talk much about their products. They're telling stories, and they're telling stories about the people in the community who were brought into the community through the run club, because people buy into people, not the products and that side of things. So they've gone full circle, a really good example of a successful run club. But again, from the height of seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people signing up for their run clubs, I don't know if it's the same thing anymore. But again, I can't make full comment on that because I don't go.
So interestingly, I never went to a Pure Sport Run Club. The number of times I've intended to has been quite high.
Okay.
Because a lot of people I know did, that I met through other things. This is one of the things that we've had people write in. So again, those of you who don't know, one of the other reasons to follow along on social media is because there's opportunities for you to get involved. So you can have your say, we can bring your opinions in. I have 2 slightly opposing things from 2 different people. So we've had Gordon, who's written in and said he moved to London. He's actually Canadian, half Vietnamese. He came to London, didn't know anyone. And so for him, being able to go for a run, which is something he could do with his fitness level, and meet people was fundamental for him finding his network. And we love Gordon, very glad to have met him through those things. And then we've also had the flip side, which is Laura, and I know a lot of other people as well have written in and said, they're very cliquey.
Yeah.
And I will admit, from going to some myself, it's very difficult. When you first go, you don't know anyone, so you talk to everyone. And then when you start to recognize a few faces, and then you have each other's contact and you say, oh, I'm going to this one. So you go to that one, you're going because they're there. So you talk to them. You don't necessarily go up and talk to everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's how the cliques form. And I don't think necessarily they're always as bad as they seem on the face of it.
Yeah.
But that's how they start. And I do think for some run clubs that started, that was almost the death of them. And if we talk about Pure Sport, that the reason I ended up not really wanting to go is because I knew that they were so busy and there were hundreds and hundreds of people going. But at the same time, I could go, and while there could be hundreds and hundreds of people, I still feel like I'm on my own. And I think that has massively put people off. But like you said, it's almost gone full circle with these cliques developed, friendships fall apart, and then they've started going back to the root source and making new friends again. And I wonder if it's going to be that sort of evolving cycle a little bit.
And I really don't want to talk negatively about any of them, whether it's run clubs or social fitness clubs, because in essence, what it's doing is encouraging more people to do fitness. And if people maybe don't particularly love fitness, this is a good vehicle for them to go and enjoy it, because they're going to meet new people or their friends are there, etc. There's lots of good things to it. And I think also don't underestimate the power of a run club. If you feel nervous about going running by yourself, whether it's dark in the evenings or whatever, you have a large group of people that you can go and run with and feel safe with. Like, that's invaluable. And I love the social side and the group fitness for that. And like I say, I've had good experience with it, but often as they grow and evolve and become too big, there's often one coach for, let's say, 60 people in some cases, maybe even more. And it's just not enough coaching eyes to make sure everyone's doing everything the way they probably should be. And especially because they're promoted as super accessible, anyone can come. It doesn't matter what your fitness level is. It's people who potentially don't have that much fitness experience who need the eyes on them in the first place. So it can snowball into, all right, we've got this really good idea and we've got this good community-based fitness, but the quality of fitness that you're getting is potentially not the best. So there's pros and cons of both of them. I think the pros of community fitness do outweigh the negatives, but they just need to be managed correctly to make sure that kind of the epidemic of bad movement isn't spread.
This is a big thing in that I don't think a social fitness club style class or run should be considered the same as going to a fitness space that hosts a class.
Yes.
Because as you've said, the quality that you receive from a hosted class in a specific venue by a coach or number of coaches, you're going there to be coached through a class to do good movement. If you go to a social club, you need to understand that the skill level is probably a little bit lower, or it should definitely be approached that way, because you're not going to have the same level of attention. And I think one of the reasons that I got on with your coaching style so early on, when I started coming to that sort of social club that was there, was it was very apparent that while this was all going on and it was social, at the same time, I knew that I could be having a chat with someone, turn around, start doing a specific exercise, and you might be there and you might be like, just 1 second, let me borrow you for 10 seconds. Let's fix that. And then you carry on doing your thing. And I can enjoy it, but I know I'm still safe. And I think that's one of the things that starts to slip, is because so many people, it's become so accessible, especially in places like London, to host a fitness club. It's very easy to start one, get a few people to come down, and immediately not have that level of sort of coaching and care. And one of the other things we've had someone write in about, so Matt wrote in and said it depends massively on the programming and the coaching, because if it is dangerous, or if the program doesn't actually make sense because it's a series of movements put together, then I also can't enjoy it. Because what was the point of me going? But the other thing that is fundamental to those sorts of classes is making sure that there's a benefit coming out of it in your training, because something that is really hard to juggle is all of a sudden, if, like I said, I ended up going to like 5 or 6 events a week just so I could meet people, but my body really took a toll on that. And you're a coach here, if you have clients and that sort of thing that want to go to these clubs, how do you approach involving that?
It's a great question. I just want to bounce back a little bit before I answer that. You said the association with brands as well. Often there'll be a social fitness club, whatever you want to call it, and the brand that's maybe sponsoring it or putting it on, putting it together, has brought in someone to be the face of this event to attract more people because of maybe a following, etc., etc., and then gone, would you mind leading it? This person, maybe fitness influencer, whatever, I don't know what their credibility is, I don't know what their qualifications is, and then you put them in front of like 80 people and go, okay, now coach. Or, oh, can you program the session? And like you say, it might not make sense. It might just be completely crazy with the loading or the volume or the time frames or whatever. And it's just like, you need to have someone who's experienced with group exercise fitness. And the first time I stood in front of 60 people, sometimes more actually, at like the height of some of the collaborations we did when I was coaching at Vauxhall, for example, more people than that. It was kind of like, you needed to have that experience. I wasn't experienced in it, and it was like learn on the job very quickly. And what you need to recognize as a coach is that people are coming for the social side. So when they're talking over you, don't get overly stressed out about that, but just make sure you're switched on and going around and like helping people where they need help. So that's like a big one, is kind of just juggling who's a coach, who's not a coach, who should be coaching, who shouldn't be coaching, and just being sensible with what classes you're going to. But again, like my experience with it and the people that we know who run the sessions, like Revive, for example, hugely successful, and they put on a good session. But I think you need to go to those sessions, especially if you're more serious about your training and your fitness, and understand that this is social first, fitness second. And that's completely fine. So that like leads me on to how I deal with my clients, because again, a lot of my clients I've met or they know me through either Revive or other places that I've been coaching, and all of their friends still go to these sessions. So if I take it out of their program, they go, well, that's kind of my one contact point a week with all of my mates. I still want that. But again, I view that very much as, okay, I need to understand kind of how the session is going to be run, what volume / loading they're going to be doing in that session, and then try and fit it into their week. But I know that if they were really, really serious about their training, they probably would skip that session and either rest or put something slightly more beneficial into the program for them there. But again, this comes, and we spoke about this in an episode gone by. So I'd recommend you going, what was it, episode 50 or 52 or both?
Probably, yeah, 50 or 52, yeah.
Where I was talking about the transition to online coaching and being adaptable and flexible as a coach. You've got to understand that people have lives and people enjoy these social fitness clubs. So me just eradicating it isn't particularly sympathetic. I have to appreciate that people want to do that, leave it in, and just like work around it where we can. But yeah, I think like I'd like to remain positive around social fitness because it does so much good, and it helps people like Gordon, new to London, like so many people, meet people who are similar minded to them. And it means that they don't have to go and drink in the pub to meet new mates or like whatever it happens to be, because I know our experience. I don't want to go out drinking. I want to go and do fitness. I want to go outside and do some sport or whatever. And that's how I want to meet people, rather than the quintessential British, let's go and sit in a pub garden.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me when I first came to London. I've never been that big or that keen on drinking personally. And I know that around here, there's so many great pubs and there's some beautiful pub gardens and loads of places that you can drink. And I was a bit concerned that it was like, am I going to pay a lot of money into something that I'm not that particularly wild about just so I can have a social life? Because I don't also want to be a person that just lives like a hermit crab at home.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really aware of this whole sort of side of life existing, it was great for me to discover. But there's also a lot of people that have a very healthy relationship with both. And one of the main reasons, and this kind of comes back to how you can use social fitness clubs and run clubs in your programming, that I think is great. Some of the very first ones I went to were people that it was very much just a part of their life that these existed. So they'd do one, maybe two a week. They'd meet some friends that they had in that space there. They had their work friends and they had their other friends as well. And they'd meet up with them for different reasons. But they would use run clubs to get their easy miles in. And I think that's one of the beautiful things is if we take another run club, which has done incredibly well, which is the Runners and Stunners Run Club by Jenny Fit. Jenny started it off because she wanted to highlight that she isn't trying to break records necessarily with her running, but she wants to get her running done and she wants to be able to run and enjoy it. And she managed to find a massive group. And I think for the most part, it is women that go along to it. And they have managed to make a really good group of people that want to get their runs done and they want to have a good time doing it and they don't want to have to stress too much about it. And I think I personally, I like going for a slow or easy run sometimes on my own, clear my headspace. But there are times where I just don't want to do it. And the idea of doing it with someone else and just being able to chat, because you should be going slow enough to chat for some of those runs, is great. And it's very distractive. And a run club provides that space. You can choose your pacing a lot of the time at these things. So you can go at a slower, easier pace. If you're also going there because you want to see if you can push yourself around other people that are maybe slightly quicker than you, then that also provides that opportunity. And so it's kind of, again, you can actually use them in your training. If
Yeah.
you know that over the weekend you need to do a long run, but you really don't want to do it because it's cold. I mean, we're fortunate this weekend is a beautiful sign of summer to come. But if we go back like 2 weekends ago when it was horrible, I didn't want to go out.
It's always easier with other people, isn't it?
Exactly. And if you know that you're going to end up with a coffee and a chat and something like that afterwards, then yeah, who wouldn't want to really go and do that? So I definitely don't think they're dead.
Yeah.
I definitely think they have their place. I think you just need to be sensible with managing it for your expectations. If you genuinely have no fitness expectations or goals or anything that you're really working towards, then do whatever you want to do. But if you are, like you said, want to be a bit more serious, then there's a reason that you don't see a lot of these elite athletes doing multiple social fitness club events every week or even hosting them because they've got other things that take slightly more precedent in their training.
Yeah, you're saying lots of good things and I keep on having ideas and then forgetting them. But I think I'd be hypocritical to say or talk negatively about them, because when I think about how I kind of got into fitness kind of over the last however many years, it's been through CrossFit. And the cornerstone or the foundation of all CrossFit affiliates is the community. So for me, going to a group class in a CrossFit gym is community-based fitness. It's like over the last however many months and years, it's become like social fitness through Gymshark, conditioning clubs, etc., other things, etc., etc. But the cornerstone of what makes CrossFit an amazing way to train is community-based fitness. So I think I'd feel a bit hypocritical if I was like, yeah, these social clubs don't have a place. But I think you summed it up well. You just have to go with an expectation. And again, through what we do with ROXD at the moment, we have those community-based fitness sessions as well. They're slightly smaller, and as a result, you can kind of, I don't know, manage them slightly easier. But our focus is more on, and I see other conditioning clubs and other fitness classes doing the same thing. Our focus is on adding value in terms of your knowledge to movement and just creating a bit more autonomy. So one thing that we saw a gap in the market potentially was that no one was running like a group-based community strength session. And I find it crazy that that wasn't happening, because strength is often one of the things overlooked by people, especially doing Hyrox. You think, oh, this is a test of my endurance. I'm just going to do a load of aerobic capacity without the strength stuff, the supporting strength and accessory work. And also, it's the thing that people potentially are less confident with. If I go, I'll go and deadlift. Oh, I'd rather just do burpees and rowing because I know I'm not going to hurt myself doing that. But if you ask me to deadlift, I'm not sure. So that's why we're like, okay, let's do a community-based strength class. And that had really good uptake. And it's a little bit more social because you have to do a set of deadlifts every 3 minutes. What do you do in the remaining time? You will either stand around in awkward silence or you talk to people. So it's a great place to communicate and meet new people as well. So that's kind of what we're doing with ROXD, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more later on. But yeah, I think there's definitely space for group exercise classes and social clubs.
Well, it's interesting what you said there, because I think there's many different branches to social fitness and these different clubs. But one of the other things that I wanted to mention was through social fitness and through the people that I have met, I have explored different areas of fitness that I was probably too I don't want to say insecure, but too like unsure of if I really wanted to go and do that myself.
Yeah.
If I look in the last year, some of the things I've done in fitness is pretty cool. So I've ended up doing an ultra marathon in support of a friend, which I'd never would have thought I'd have done. I have done hot yoga, which is very much out of my comfort zone. And again, hot yoga, that wasn't like a social thing. That wasn't, it was a normal class, but someone that I met through fitness clubs and training was like, hey, look, ClassPass is doing this trial at the moment. Should we go and do hot yoga? Glad I've done it. Would probably do it again. Did feel tremendously awkward. It was just us two blokes in a room full of women that were far stronger than us, by the way, in those positions. We were thoroughly embarrassed. But it was good. And I enjoyed being able to actually try it and having someone else there. And that wouldn't have happened without some of these things. So the branches and where they can go are massive. So yeah, big fan of them. However, as we've said, there are a few natives with the cliqueiness and that sort of thing. That kind of brings us into what grinds your gears. Because I know that social fitness clubs for some people are a real gear grinder. But my question for you this week is, what is grinding your gears?
From my long list, I have to be selective. And I know I'm going to upset a lot of people. Nose tape. I have to. It's been on my mind for far too long. Whether or not you believe in the scientific benefits, you understand the scientific benefits, I can't understand it. I can't understand the nose tape.
Have you tried it?
I haven't. Which, again, it
Okay.
ruins my credibility, and I don't think I'll ever try it.
Because I'm going to be controversial here.
Go for it, please.
I obviously, because you know me,
Love the nose tape.
no, I immediately, before I even thought about putting a strip of sticky stuff on my nose, was like, is there any scientific benefit to this? Looked it up. Nah, not really. The only thing is, mentally, it can have a difference. Because, and again, if we start talking about perceived exertion and that sort of thing, the slightest difference can make a massive impact mentally, which can then have a physical impact. I don't think I'll ever compete with it on or like run with nose tape on unless I actually have like a blocked sinus. Occasionally, when my nose feels a bit more bunged up and I'm going into bed, I'll put one on when I sleep. And I tell you what, you can smell colors. It is incredible. Like, it feels like your whole nostril is completely like widened. And all of a sudden I'm like, cool, breathing's so much easier for me to sleep now. And then in the morning, I'll take it off and it feels like my nose is saggy as soon as I take it off because they like they sink back in. I feel like my voice changes a bit like this. But yeah, I don't think, based on the science of it, when you start doing high intensity exercise anyway, your body tries to clear any congestion so that you can get as much oxygen anyway. And having that fractional increase in your nostril, which doesn't really change your breathing rate, or even if it does and you do get more oxygen, your body's then going to slow or fractionally slow down how much you need to breathe because it's getting enough oxygen.
I appreciate the science behind it. My issue is mainly people look at someone else wearing it and go, I need to be doing that. Or this is going to be an easy fix and I'm going to perform far better because I've got this nose tape on. And probably what you need to be doing is more effective or more efficient training rather than just going for these nose tapes or like whatever other shortcuts you can think of.
Also, I will agree with you on one thing. The nose tape doesn't need to be the most obvious thing in the entire building when it's on your face.
Right.
Like, you don't have to have a completely blacked out one if it is contrasting to your face. Like, they do clear ones.
Yeah.
Just get a clear one.
But that comes part and parcel. You want people to know you're wearing nose tape if you're wearing nose tape.
Actually, this is slowly becoming my gear grinding thing, but it's not. I think there's probably multiple companies, but there's a company that has gone away from wasting, because that's producing waste. We don't like that. So what they've done is they've made a permanent thing that goes over your nose with magnets that you put and you stick on your nose. So you stick the magnets to your nose and then you've got the bridge that just goes over and holds the magnets and then pulls it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, the sticky things that you still have to stick to the magnets in your nose, that's still waste. So like, you haven't solved a problem. You've just moved the problem to the other side.
And made the product more expensive, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is far more expensive. Okay, so I'm kind of on board with you on that one.
Okay.
My one, and this actually like spreads further than fitness. Why can't I own anything anymore? Why do I have to continuously pay to have something? So like, this starts from fitness watches.
Okay, here you go.
Equipment like that. But why do I have to pay? If we take an example of Whoop, if you want to send me a product to try out, maybe I can back you up on this. But why do I have to pay nearly 30 quid a month forever? And then as soon as I don't, I have to give it back to you. Just to be able to see something like the same data every month. It's not like it's getting more impressive every month that I pay. And I understand that, that piece of tech, if I was to buy it at a flat rate, could be like £400 or £500. But it's only like 18 months of me wearing it anyway before I've paid that, and I'm still having to pay that, and you're locked in a lot of the time for like a year into paying this. I hate it. Why can't I own something?
Yeah.
Why do you still own it when I'm paying for it? That is really pissing me off.
That's business, Angus.
But it's it's not, and it's really annoying because it's like if you brought out in 9 months time, after I've been paying 9 months for this thing, you brought out a new one that actually has something, and then I don't get the latest version, even though I'm still paying a premium rate. I'm still stuck with the old one, and I'm still going to pay that for the next 2 years unless I start paying more. That annoys me.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think when they released the new Whoop, other fitness wearables are available.
Yeah.
We're going to get in trouble soon. And every time you're like, I can just edit it out, you leave it in, and I'm the one that's going to get cancelled. You look out for yourself.
Just have to, the more eyes that are on you getting cancelled, the less eyes are on me.
I think when they release the new Whoop, they would send it to you.
Okay.
I think within the same contract.
That's fair enough. But
Again, it is extortionately expensive for what you're getting. And I think if you just buy another watch or another fitness wearable that you can own outright and I don't have to pay subscription for, then you're getting similar data. It's not as accurate. I will say that when I used to wear my Whoop, the sleep tracking and all of the other data around it actually was very impressive. But again, I don't want to or need to be paying for that.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't had the chance to, I definitely recommend going back, listen to episode 51 where I had Phil Lerney on, who is an incredibly knowledgeable guy when it comes to all things sleep, supplements, the science behind how your body performs. But one of the main things he says is while fitness wearables are great because they're identifying key things that people can maybe control a little bit more, and they pay attention to maybe I won't have this drink, or maybe I will go to bed an hour earlier because I know I'll get a better score on my watch, which actually just means that you're going to get a better score for you in life. The only thing that's really that accurate on them is the HRV, the heart rate variability. So while we could go and spend £600-700 on a really expensive watch like a Garmin or an Apple Watch, other well-known brands obviously are available, or you could be paying your subscription rate for your Fitbit or your Whoop every single month. The actual accuracy between a lot of the readings that you're getting out of them isn't that different. And that makes that really difficult. And HRV in itself is actually a relatively simple thing to track.
Sure.
So if you actually just bought a thing that only did HRV and you understood what that meant, you could probably do an all right job of keeping everything else focused.
Yeah.
And that's why I get annoyed that I'm continuously paying for something that could be relatively simple.
I think also the amount of people who wear a Whoop or any fitness tracker, and it's giving you data saying you're underslept, you're not well recovered, all of these metrics are in the red, yet you ignore them. So it's like, what's the point in having that data anyway? And then the other thing is, like you say, the difference between Whoop accuracy and another product's accuracy, it doesn't matter as long as you're consistently using your data. So I harp on about, I hate the inaccuracy of wrist heart rate data versus a chest strap. If you're only ever using your wrist heart rate data, it's consistently inconsistent and therefore can still be used as a tool. So it's the same thing.
I'm going to transition us into the next section of the podcast using an incredible transition. For you, what is a fundamental thing that makes a good fitness strap sort of thing? What makes a good one good?
Like the physical product.
Yeah, the physical product.
Number one, washability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's just going to be stinky very quickly. Like it needs to be easily washed.
I was going to say number one, I like it to have a screen, ideally tell the time, which is another thing I don't understand about people that get Whoop. So I'm going to move on from that and we're going to go straight into what makes a good coach. Good coach.
That was convoluted.
It was so convoluted.
And also understand the last question.
I just wanted to drop my last gear grinding thing in there about that particular
I also don't
product.
think I've ever watched this. It goes in the shower with me. That's as much washing as it gets.
Sometimes I catch a whiff of my watch strap and I'm like, yeah, I should probably give you one of those.
Yeah. Rather than wash it, just buy a new strap.
I actually have other straps, but I don't know if some of these things you can actually wash.
Yeah.
Like they look a bit plasticky. But
what makes a good coach?
What makes a good coach a good coach is the transition I attempted to make before we then spoke about watch straps. So I presented this to you before the show because I think there's also a parallel conversation, which I will happily bring in and out because I know you're going to speak with more experience about the coaching side of things.
Sure.
But I think a good coach is somewhat hindered by the coachability of the individual in that if you take me on a bad day where I genuinely don't want to know if I'm doing something wrong, I just want to get my session done, whether or not, if I have a bad coach or the best coach in the world for me, it doesn't really matter. Like it's not going to make the biggest difference. But if I'm there on a day where I really want to learn, and let's say it's like deadlifts, and I'm like, cool, deadlifts for me actually isn't a great movement because of my
Hilarious.
my hilariously long legs and like my general limbs, I actually really struggle with a conventional deadlift.
Sure.
So if I go into a session and I'm like, cool, I actually really want to learn this and I'm happy to drop my ego and, you know, go to some lightweight and learn properly. That is where, for me, it would be obvious between a bad coach and a good coach, because a good coach is going to be able to actually give me things to learn and a bad coach might not. And I might actually come away with an injury from a bad coach. So that's where I think the big disparity is. But if you're not in a coachable mood, or if a person genuinely is not coachable, then I think how good a coach is less important.
I think it depends. Like, I can argue it either way. I think, you know, like a bad tradesman blames his tools. So if you're not getting the results that you want from your client, it's very easy to turn around and go, all right, I'm going to blame my client first. I'm going to say they are not coachable. And as a result, the things that I'm telling them aren't working, would be a very easy excuse to have as a coach. And that's definitely never something that I would even really consider. I'm never going, oh, well, this client's not coachable. Fortunately for me, all of the clients that I work with are very coachable, 90% of the time. So I'd say, yes, there is a case for arguing that some people aren't coachable. And like you've spoken about it yourself as well previously with me, whether it was on the podcast or not, you talk about, I didn't think there was a coach that could push me as hard as I could push myself. And that was just because I don't think you'd found the right person. So again, potentially your attitude at the time was not as malleable or as coachable as it probably could have been. But you just need to find the right person. And if we come back to the original question, what makes a good coach? Underlying for all coaches, it's a relationship building industry, is fitness and coaching. You have to build a good relationship. So it's less about the tangible, like, oh, you need to put your feet here for a deadlift and you're going to put your hands here and et cetera, et cetera. This is the sequence of the movement. It's more about understanding what makes you tick. And if you're in the mood where you're like, I'm not coachable today, that might just be a day that we don't train. That's going to be a rest day for us, or we're going to do something different, or you're going to do your own session, whatever. You're going to go in and you're going to do some bench press and some bicep curls because that's what you feel like you want to do. And then we'll come back the next day and maybe your attitude's changed slightly. But again, that comes into me being adaptable and flexible as a coach and understanding that not every day is going to be this really cohesive thing. And you're allowed to butt heads and have different opinions, but you need to be able to, as the client, respect where your coach is coming from. And if you can't have that respect for whatever reason, maybe they're not justifying the programming, or then you're not seeing the results that you want, then maybe the relationship isn't quite right. But there's definitely people who are more and less coachable than others. But yeah, if you're struggling in that relationship from a coaching perspective or from a client perspective, then maybe you need to find something that works better for you.
One thing I also want to squash very early on in this particular topic discussion, when people go looking for a coach, they look for someone who has usually got the evidence of being good at the thing themselves, because then you go to that person with a level of trust that if they know what they're doing, then they must be pretty good and they can explain it to me. I would honestly, while there is a bit of respect and credibility and that someone's been able to achieve something themselves, I would separate the two entirely, because some of the most talented athletes I've met couldn't coach anyone to come even close to their ability. And some of the less gifted, but still interested in certain sports, people that have really gone away and understand what they're able to teach and how to relay that information and can actually take a client very quickly above their own ability, that's the coach you really want. And while it may not be the coach for their entire time, if this particular athlete or client is able to really reach the heights of a sport, they might need pushing with a different style of coaching. But trying to find who is a good coach is not defined by how your potential coach looks or what they have achieved themselves in the sport. And like I said, it's very difficult, because I know for a fact that if I changed up and over summer I decided I wanted to do Ironman, that was my new thing. Would I turn to someone that's probably done an Ironman? I'd probably look for that. Because again, I want to have the appreciation that they know what it's like to have done it. But I'm not necessarily looking for a world champ, because I don't necessarily think that some of the advice that they would give someone else who's at the elite level would actually be useful to me. My transition time in an Ironman is probably not going to be the first thing I need to worry about. I need to make sure I can survive the swim. So I need to know that there's someone that can coach me really well on swimming and isn't going to badge me about transition time when I can't get out of the water in the first place to get to the transition. And so that's something I want to squash straight away. Just because you look a certain way or have achieved a certain thing in a sport does not make you a good coach for that specific sport.
Yeah, I think that's another grind my gears topic. But I mean, it's the perverse nature of the fitness industry, especially when it comes to aesthetics. You look at someone and you go, well, they look a certain way, so in theory, they're going to be able to show me how it's done, but everyone's different. So it's like, unless you can accurately communicate certain things to that person, you're not going to be a good coach. And that's why it stems down to, and it kind of like a checklist for me on what makes a good coach is you have to be knowledgeable. Like, you can't question that. You need to understand what you're doing. But arguably as important is your empathy. And some people might consider that a weird thing to say, but you need to be able to communicate and understand your client and understand how they feel. And it comes down again to, I keep on saying it, adaptability, flexibility. And that's the same thing with all of my clients. It's less about the hard program design and movement prescription. It's about being flexible to their life and their lifestyle and what works for them. Clients traveling around, going away, socializing, people being ill. You have to factor all of these things in, and you can't just go, this is 7 days of programming, make sure you do it. There's a lot of give and take. And for a lot of my clients, I have an idea of where they're going 7 days in the week, probably longer actually, but in that 7 day of the week, I don't necessarily fill all of the gaps because I wait for their feedback on how they feel. Maybe one session was way harder than they were expecting it to be, and as a result, the next day they don't feel as good. So I'm not just going to continuously smash them into the ground. I want to make them better rather than just killing them. So then I might manipulate the next couple of days. So there's so many factors that come into it. And it's such like a subjective thing where a bad coach for someone might be a good coach for someone else, as long as they have that knowledge and base understanding in the first place, because everyone's personalities are slightly different. And when I talk about group exercise coaching, I've probably said this to you before, you've got to be a chameleon as a coach, because your communication color or style might be blue. So as the chameleon coach, I have to be blue, but the person over there is red and the person over there is green. And then there's some orange guy over there. And it's like, you have to change colors. And actually Phil said it really nice. Like, I can't recommend going back and listening to that episode more, because it's one of my favorite MindSets podcast episode that you've done. And he talks really eloquently about the way you should coach. And he says about the bar stool cue for squatting, that might work for one person, but it doesn't work for another. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible. But again, like, it depends how you define good or successful as a coach. If someone's coming to me as a client, they want results, whatever that happens to be in. So yes, I might be really knowledgeable and I might be really sympathetic to their life and their situations, and we have a really good time working together. But if at the end of the day, they get to the start of the race and they don't perform, or they go to the gym and they're not performing, am I a good coach? So you have to be all of these different layers, and every person's going to give you a different answer, I think.
One thing that's really interesting is, again, a bit like you just said there, it depends what you define as being a good coach and like being a successful coach, because the number of times in the last few months, I've actually thought about just getting my coaching qualification, because I feel like I have the knowledge to be able to coach, and I've coached different things before, but I don't want to pretend I have a qualification or coach someone in the hope that they don't get hurt, because if they get hurt, that's big lawsuit territory. I don't want to put myself or even that person in that situation. Yeah. So I've looked at it, but as a result of that, the wondrous algorithms that we see online have immediately gone, I'm going to push all these ads about how successful you could be as a personal trainer. And a lot of them start with, if you're a personal trainer and you're not making $5,000 a month, this is the problem. And immediately for me, I don't want to work with a company that says that, because earning $5,000 a month as a personal trainer, while sure, that sounds nice, that doesn't define being a successful coach to me. If I'm earning $5,000 a month, but I'm having 50 client turnover every single month because none of my clients are getting results, then what am I doing? I'm not having a positive impact on people's lives. I'm not bettering people, and I'm having to work so hard to get more people through the door just so that I can happily wave off the other 50 that are coming in replacement or leaving in replacement for those. And so I think that there is a big disconnect throughout the industry of what a successful coach is. And I think you and I both see it as successful client stories, working with great clients that you enjoy working with and seeing positive impact on their lives, which also then positively impacts you. But maybe for other people, it is just a job. And so therefore being a successful coach is, have I ticked the boxes? Have I written the program for this person for the next 7 days? Did they do it? If they didn't, do I change next week? And that is, again, something we've had someone write in and say, well, a good coach to them is someone that considers the long-term goal and is adaptable over their program. So their program on a weekly basis might never look the same because they're working towards that end goal. Whereas there are also coaches, they've been coached by the program pretty much the same thing every week because that 7-day period works towards the goal. And then it's just on repeat for a period of time because hopefully that makes a big difference. And to be honest, with people that have never followed a program before, probably will. But then a good coach might go, okay, cool. Well, we've got, and again, we'll use the classic thing that Phil said in the episode, a 12-week block. Let's break the 12 weeks down into, okay, in the first 4 weeks, we might need to focus on strength and figuring out where you're currently at fitness wise. And then we can start to look at intensification. And then we can start to look at actually resting you off a little bit before we really push it before you compete. You can break it down that way, which means that your program's not going to look the same every week. And so that's the differences in coaching style, as well as understanding what might be a good coach and a bad coach, and kind of what you're getting for different value for money, effectively.
And it comes down to, again, like problem solving, something you and Phil spoke about a lot, and you know, from an engineering background, because you talk about that a lot. It's problem solving. The clients come to you with a goal, and then you work backwards from that goal and go, okay, how do we solve the discrepancy in where you are now and where your goal is and how you get them there? But yeah, I think for me, and you summed it up nicely there, as an average athlete, I'm not piggybacking off any of my results for clients coming to me, and I don't 100% don't go out of my way to find clients. If someone has searched me out or has met me and gone, oh yeah, I think I'd like to work with this person, then great, we'll talk about it. And if I'm not the right fit, I'll definitely tell them, because it's going to be a waste of their time. It's going to be a waste of my time. But one thing that I've recently really just loved doing is just enjoying the successes with my clients, because the times, most of my clients now, Hyroxers, as you know, the times they're running, I'm never running those times. So it's like, I've just got to get the enjoyment out of them, enjoying the process of training and seeing the hard work and consistency pay off. And then it comes race day, I'm as nervous as they are. I'm watching the live feed. If I'm not there, I'm as nervous as they are, because like I've lived it with them, and the comments they're giving me day to day on the feedback of what's working, what's not working, what they're finding hard, when they go, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's making me better. And it's just this process where if your coach isn't that invested, I feel like you're not going to get as much out of the training process as you probably could. So yeah, it's been a really fun kind of journey working with lots of my clients at the moment. And we're kind of like business end now of the season, where people are starting to race and compete a bit more. And so we're seeing the tangible results happening, and kind of either what I've done hasn't worked, or hopefully what I have done with them over the last couple of weeks and months, and in some cases years, is actually going to really pay dividends.
One other thing that we had a guy that I used to go to uni with, trained with a couple of times in the gym. He has got a very mature approach with coaching. And I think this is something that you've said, is that because not every coach is going to work for some person, and someone that might be deemed a bad coach by me might actually be a great coach for someone else I know, because of the way that we like to be coached. And like you said, with the whole colors and understanding how each other's brains work. But something that I find really interesting is he's had a number of different coaches all through the same sport. He just moves on every once in a while, likes a fresh perspective. He's also got his understanding, finds that sometimes relationships can be affected throughout the time. But he's very happy to move on to another coach and leave no bad blood behind.
Yeah.
And so therefore he's very upfront. When he doesn't like something in his program, he'll tell the coach, and hopefully the coach adjusts it. And again, I would say a good coach would do. Maybe a good coach would also stand their ground. Which is another topic. But at the end of the day, he's very happy to move on from a coach after a period of time. And so he says, what I don't want is a coach to try and work for/with me too much. If I've come to you as a coach through recommendation or because I found you.
You expect that style,
I'm expecting
right?
that style of coaching. And I want you to give that to me. I don't want you to go, well, what have you done before? Let's continue doing that and I'll try and push you and adapt to me too much. Let me be molded into your training style. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm happy to move on. Which is I think it might sound immature to people to just move on and try and find the next coach, but it's almost a very mature approach because you're willing to try something different. You're willing to be pushed in a different area, and you are going to someone to learn a given skill set that you might have a specialist in something. So you go to that. If you're, let's say, a heptathlete, you might actually want a coach that's a little bit more dominant in one of your weaker sports. And next season, that's actually not one of your weaker events anymore. So you actually go to a different coach to help you with a different. And I think that is quite a mature approach. And I guess it only really works if the coach also understands that this might not be a permanent relationship.
Yeah. I think that, and you see examples of that all the time. And I see it a lot in CrossFit where there's athletes or certain people who are expecting a result that's maybe not quite within reach of where they are currently. And the first thing they'll do is blame the coach and move on. So there's kind of two sides to the coin. Are you moving on just because you want the fresh perspective, which is absolutely fine. But if you're moving on just because you're not seeing the results as quickly as you want, maybe you just haven't given the process enough time, which again, you can move on, and I'd argue that that might be the right thing. But if you're constantly bouncing between different things, then it's probably too much. There's too much inconsistency. But fresh perspective is always a good thing, I think. And like if clients who I work with look at the training as long as they've given it a good enough stint and go, look, this just isn't working for me for whatever reason, I'm not taking that personally. It's just like our styles don't work, or we just don't, our personalities don't quite click, and that's completely fine. And I understand that if you're paying for something, you want to get what you want out of it, but just making sure that you have enough consistency with the coach to make sure that you're getting at least giving it a good enough chance.
I also think there's one thing that we possibly haven't discussed about, and it's kind of up to you how far you want to go into this, but we've discussed very much so far about coaching pretty much on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
And I was about to move on and say, actually, you see tennis coaches be passed around all the time, again, looking for different skill sets and also looking for who's the hot coach right now.
Yeah.
But there is a totally different side to coaching, which I've actually had to deal with a lot in my previous sport, which is where you're dealing with a team which has multiple coaches and a head coach.
Yeah.
And if we talk, again, going back to my history in American football, Jesus Christ, there's a lot of coaches. So for those who don't know, in your average American football team, if we actually talk about an NFL team, you've got your head coach. They are responsible for most of the big calls on the day. They are the managers of the team, and they are actually managers because below them you have the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. They are in charge of the players who are going to try and score the points in the offensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator is the person who's in charge of stopping the other team scoring points. You also have the special teams coordinator who is in charge of any sort of changes of possession or kicking through the posts, anything like that. So you've got those three who are kind of also managers, because below them, each of the positions has a coach, sometimes multiple.
Yeah.
And so they all have to band together and work as a team. And while the quarterback's coach might never deal with the defensive lineman coach, they actually will still have to cross-reference so that the quarterback coach can help understand when the quarterbacks aren't doing a good enough job of seeing
stuff like that.
And understanding really what's going on in front of them.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I would say that actually a good head coach isn't actually very adaptable necessarily to athletes. And I think there is a big golden rule, and Nick Saban, who's one of the most successful team sport coaches of all time, he has a golden rule: is when the game is on the line, you need to win. You have to lean on your best athletes. And while that might not create the most positive environment, it creates results. And so you have 5 seconds and you need to score a touchdown, you're on the 1 yard line. Do I give it to my running back who's great at running for 20 yards most of the time and has done so in this game? Or do I give it to my D lineman that weighs 250 kilograms and could run anyone over for 1 yard? And is also going to the NFL in 2 years' time, even though he's in high school right now? Well, you're gonna give it to the D lineman. Unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You win the game. yes, you've pissed off your running back who was supposed to get the game scoring touchdown and go to prom as the prom king. But as a coach, you've got to do what's right. And on a one-to-one basis, destroyed that relationship.
Yeah.
On a team basis, and in terms of dealing with the relationships between coaches, he's done a great job. And I think that's a totally different dynamic. And that, I think when you're talking about coaching on that level, you're actually talking more in because it is quite often a career, you're actually talking about managers and how they manage themselves and manage the people that they do have to work with, which includes the athletes, because that is where I would say you actually do have a lot more headbutting, and you need to have that level of respect. Because me being incredibly knowledgeable, I would say for this country, I'm quite knowledgeable about understanding the game of American football. If I go over to America and people see me as an English guy, first of all, just by the accent, there's no credibility. Most people wouldn't be able to play for me because there's just no respect there. And I understand that, fortunately. But what they might not know is that I actually have a much greater knowledge of the sport.
Ted Lasso coming to the UK to coach soccer.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of it. Is Ted actually could, I mean, he's actually not. He doesn't really know what he's talking about at all. But if he actually knew what he was talking about, he'd still find it very, very difficult to coach this
credibility,
because there is no credibility there. And I think that's the difference, where if he was working with one of those players on a one-to-one basis, there is far more of a chance that he's going to have success with that one person than if he steps into a team.
But this is, I mean, it's really interesting that you bring this up, because let's bring that back into like a fitness specific situation. If you went to a fitness class, and let's just use Hyrox as an example, and the person taking the class might have so much knowledge, like technical knowledge about a certain thing, but then you know that they can't push X amount of weight on the sled. Does that make them less credible in your perspective? Because this is like an age-old argument that we have within the CrossFit coaching community is, will I gain respect of my members if I can't do a certain movement? Let's say a high skill movement like a ring muscle up or a bar muscle up or handstand push up or handstand walking, which are like real things that we have to coach. I can do all of those things, but another coach might not be able to. But we might have the same amount of knowledge and ways to coach them. Why am I getting more credibility because I can do them versus the person who can't do them? It's like this, and that's why there's so much hypocrisy and kind of, I always use the term, it's perverse within the fitness industry, because people piggyback off their results, people piggyback off the way they look, people piggyback off the movements that they can do, and as a result, they gain the credibility and they get the kind of the light shone on them. Where there's lots of coaches who are arguably better coaches, more knowledgeable, better communicators, more adaptable, more fluid, but they don't get that. They don't get put on a pedestal because they can't do the movements.
Well, there's also, I mean, one of the biggest things that I think is overlooked in sport generally, and this goes not so much so for the very, very elite historic champions in sport. There is a massive amount of luck in sport. But if we look at things like Formula One and NFL and the Premier League with football, or even just generally worldwide football, it's the same top managers that go from team to team. And if you actually looked at someone's CV and you didn't read the team names they were at, you'd be like, okay, you got fired from there, you got fired from there, you got fired from there. I'm going to hire you is such a terrible thing to make the decision on. However, if I then look, okay, you got fired from there, but you did actually win the Champions League. That's a bit weird, but we'll take you because we might get some of the luck, or we might get a little bit of whatever that was. And I think what's so difficult about that is if we take the approach of, let's say, Leicester Football Club, and they came up, they won the Premier League, right? I would argue if Leicester had had what you would expect of a season from them in that year, that manager, he would have been able to pay his bills for the rest of his life because he's got a team to the Premier League in the first place. But the disparity between his lifestyle and his career opportunities going forward, just from that one season alone, is totally different because they won the league. And so you do, and this is what I was saying about Formula One, team principals from Formula One just move around. You pretty much have different colors in their uniforms every year, and you could turn up like 5 years ago, and most of the team principals are the same or are in a different position within the team. It's the same faces, and it's because they've broken into that rank, and then they kind of just move around. And like you said, they're there from credibility standpoint. There might be someone better in Formula 2 as a team principal overall, but they're not going to get that shot until they break that upper echelon, or they do something so crazy that actually gets the attention.
Yeah.
So I think that another thing is, like, as much as there's luck in individual games in sport, there's a relative degree of luck in the success of your coaching
Yeah.
that is reliant on results as well.
Well, maybe it's a topic we talk about later on, and we get the listeners to because I'd be interested to know what people think. It's like, do you want your coach to be able to do all the movements? Is that something that is important to you?
Yeah, and I think that's again, if I was to weigh in on that very briefly, for me that isn't so fundamental. If I can see a progression myself in a movement, whether a coach can do it or not, but that comes from me understanding that I'm not necessarily a visual learner.
Yeah.
I'm a comprehensive learner. So I can't do a ring muscle up. I know you can, but if we flipped that, and I could, and even if I can't watch you do one to show me something, that wouldn't affect me. If you could explain to me that my wrist is in the wrong position and I'm weaker, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I get that. But I completely understand for someone else, what I've just said there doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I need to watch you repetitively.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's a standpoint. But we've spoken about quite a few different things there, and that takes us into the final section of the podcast.
Yeah.
Which is the ROX sponsors section. Do you want to talk about ROX at all?
Yeah, let's do it. Every time we talk about this, I'll try and give a different explanation of what it is and really confuse people. ROX is a training brand that me and my business partner Q set up probably nearly 6 months ago now.
Crazy.
No, maybe not that much. 4 or 5 months. But it's coaching, training, community-based fitness sessions, and we also have some apparel and merch for fitness racing specific, but it's kind of built on championing the community and the people within the community of fitness racing.
But like you said, you also provide a bit of the coaching side of things in your community, which is
absolutely cool. Yeah.
Well, as part of the collaboration with ROX, we have the quiz at the end of each episode, which you guys can get involved with. And we've got quite a diverse quiz, and this time we've not relied on AI or any weird website. We have put this together.
Go better than that.
So, I spoke actually in this episode about the fact that I can't own anything anymore.
Sure.
Fortunately, at the moment, when I go into a shoe shop and I buy a pair of shoes, I don't have to pay monthly until they wear away. I can own them. But what I'm interested to know is the original Jordan 1s.
Oh, cool.
How much were they in US dollars when they first were released? I'm not going to give you multiple choice for this.
Okay.
I want a number. Bear in mind how much they are now.
USD.
Do you want me to tell you roughly what they are in US dollars now? I think you know, because you've got,
okay. Okay, I'm going to try and think about when they were probably released. How much a pair of Jordan 1s were. So you're buying these for basketball.
Yeah.
You're not buying these because they're
I'm actually wearing a pair now. I have no idea how on earth someone would play basketball in these. Yeah. They're horrible to like run around in.
And an original pair of Jordan 1s now is like thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say...
But we're talking like...
Yeah.
No. We're talking like they're just fresh out of the market as a pair of shoes.
I'm going to say... I think they'll be cheaper than what they are now.
Okay.
I'm going to say $80.
$80. $65 would have got you a pair of Jordan 1s back then.
Okay, well, I'll take that. I'll take that as a guess. That's all right.
Good.
Yeah.
I thought it was good that you went cheaper. Yeah. Okay, the next question, totally different subject.
Great.
We're talking about the Olympic Games. And we're talking about Team GB specifically.
Sure.
I am going to give you multiple choice on this. How many gold medals do you think Team GB has won all time?
Oh, sure.
In the Summer Olympic Games?
Okay.
We're going to start off.
Since like the dawn of the Olympics?
Since the dawn, since Team GB first competed.
Okay, fine.
Option A, 112. Option B, 282. Option C, 304. Option D, 554. Or option E, none of the above.
We've got an option E. That's thrown me. I'm going to go with just my gut guess. And I'm going to say C.
304.
No, that sounds too low. I've committed to it. It's my gut.
Well, D was 554.
Yeah, I know, but now I'm questioning it. I've gone for C. Commit to C.
You are correct. 304 gold all-time medals. Do you know what's really annoying is when I wrote these multiple choices down, I didn't want the answer to be C because it always just feels like it is. It's always
statistically.
C. I think you actually said that.
I can't remember who told me that, but I was going into a multiple choice exam.
I was really annoyed when I was writing this down, and then I said it, and I was like, okay. Third question.
Okay.
How many medals total has Team GB won in the Winter Olympics all time?
Oh, no.
I'm not giving you multiple choice for this.
Okay.
But I can tell you something that might help you if you're really struggling.
I'm really struggling.
We've won 12 gold medals all time in Winter Olympics.
And I can't have any data around how many Winter Olympics Team GB has been involved in.
No.
Great. I'm going to say that the gold medals for Team GB will be the smallest category.
That's a fair shout. We're not very good at winter stuff.
What was, so for the Summer Olympics, I said
304.
I'm just going to ballpark it and go half that and say...
Well, that was 304 gold medals.
Oh, that was only gold?
It was only golds.
Oh, okay.
And to clarify as well, if like there's a rowing team of 4, that doesn't count as 4.
No, that's one.
Yeah.
Fine. 200.
I wish we were that good. We might have won 12 gold Winter Olympic medals, but we've only ever won 34 total medals at the Winter Olympics. Oh, no. There is quite the disparity between the two. I'd
be interested to know how many Winter Olympics Team GB has been involved in.
I'll see if I can find out. We might mention it in the next episode. So come back to the next episode because you'll find out.
Well, that was a bad guess.
Question 4. This one's fun.
That means it's not fun.
Well, there's some really good multiple choice here.
Fine.
What is a 5-hole known as in sport? It is a piece of terminology, and the question is, does it mean hitting 5 shots on the 5th hole at Augusta National Golf Course?
Interesting.
Is it a bowling ball with specifically 5 holes that allows the bowler to use an extra spin in their technique?
Yeah.
Is it the space between an ice hockey goalkeeper's legs that you can score in? Or is it scoring in 5 straight different pockets in snooker? What is a 5-hole?
I feel like I would have heard of the golf terminology before, so I'm going to count Augusta out.
Okay.
I'm going to count the ice hockey out as well, because they play with a puck. Why would you use a ball terminology?
Fair.
For those close to me, know how much I hate bowling. I hate bowling. Oh my God. That's going to be my next grind my gears. Oh, I hate bowling. I should be good at bowling. It's a ball sport. I should be good at it.
Do you use the cradle? Barriers up?
Both. I'm so bad at bowling. I'm going to go for snooker.
You're going to go for 5 straight different... Okay, right.
No. Wait. Because they pockets.
Yes, they are pockets.
Not holes.
They aren't holes.
I'll go with my gut. I'll go with snooker. Snooker.
Wrong.
Oh, that's it.
Unfortunately, it's one of the ones you discounted early on.
Great. If it's the golf, I'm going to shoot myself.
It's not. It's the space between the ice hockey goalkeeper's legs. So effectively, you can score a 5-hole by nutmegging the goalkeeper in ice hockey. Yeah.
That's good. Good trivia.
Yeah.
I feel like my justification was analytical enough to give me some credibility.
Yeah. I definitely think a 5-hole is a bit of a random thing to have in ice hockey, but I saw it and was like,
and I know nothing about ice hockey anyway, so that's a good one.
So, the last question. To the closest million.
No.
And I'm actually going to give you the answer to this in the next episode, because what I want people to do is I want people to leave a comment in the YouTube section, or just find a way to let us know your guesses, whether it's through the social media. To the closest million, what is Serena Williams' earnings from competition?
Wow. Okay.
If you're guessing and you guess this right, I will probably assume you've used Google, and that is cheating. So don't do that. Have an actual guess and leave it in the comment section of the YouTube
I feel
channel.
like my guess is going to be more accurate than you expect.
Okay.
So let's
Put your
say,
phone away. I'm joking.
let's say, as the best tennis player in the world for X amount of years, she's probably earning. Is this just competition earnings?
Just competition
Okay,
earnings.
so prize money.
Yeah.
Okay, that changes my.
I tried asking
Let's
her
not-
how much she's earned around that, but she wouldn't tell me.
She was on one of the other podcasts.
Yeah. She's too busy.
I'm gonna say she's probably making a competition maybe like 15 to let's say 15 million
Per competition.
a year.
Okay, a year.
Let's say maybe like in the peak of her career. 60. I'm gonna say 120.
120 dead on? Because I'm going for the closest million.
You saying that means that my guess is not right.
No. I'm just confirming.
Warfare.
I'm confirming that you
Maybe
went
I should go
120
more.
flat.
Because I did the bold statement of saying that my guess will be quite good. And, okay, let's just add 10. 130 million. Bang.
130 million. Did you see how easy that was to manipulate him?
Yes.
And potentially being wrong.
So easy.
Okay, 130 million. Well, if you guys think that you can do better than that, or you think he's right or wrong for any reason, let us know in the comments. Reach out to us on
You're not
Instagram.
going to give the listeners any hints on how good my guess was?
No.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll come back to it in the next episode, and I'll let you know how far away you were, whether it was within a million, whether it wasn't. But yeah, well, that does bring us to the end of this episode. Thank you guys very much for tuning in and checking out. I hope you enjoyed it. Like we said, there's obviously loads of avenues we can continue to go down on both of those topics, whether it's the coaching or whether it's talking about social fitness clubs, because I'm sure that topic will come up again as they continue to evolve. So do reach out, let us know your thoughts. And until then, we will see you in the next episode. Have you got anything else to add,
I
Charles?
don't think so.
Nice one. See you in the next episode.
With